The fountain pen in my hand cost more than the average sedan, and right now I was tempted to snap it in half. Across the mahogany expanse of the dining table, my parents, Richard and Cynthia Vance, sat huddled together like two guilty schoolchildren waiting for the principal's verdict. Richard was sweating, his eyes darting to the grandfather clock as if its ticking were a countdown to his execution. Cynthia was nervously twisting a diamond ring, one I had permitted her to buy last quarter as a reward for not embarrassing the family at the gala, around her perfectly manicured finger. "Speak," I said. My voice was low, modulated, the voice of a woman who had spent 2 lifetimes commanding boardrooms. Richard flinched, his body jumping as if it would hit the ceiling had his legs not been anchored firmly beneath the mahogany table. He picked up a piece of toast with a trembling hand. "Elise, honey, we have news." "I know," I said, not looking up from the financial report on my tablet. "The DNA results came back from the lab in Geneva 3 hours ago. It's a match. You found her." Cynthia let out a gasp, clutching her pearls. You hacked the clinic?" "I own the clinic, Mother, indirectly through a shell corporation under the umbrella of Vance Medical. Did you really think a biological sample from this family would travel anywhere without me tracking it?" I swiped to the next page of the quarterly earnings. "So, when does she arrive?" My parents exchanged a look of sheer terror. They had wanted this day for 15 years. Not because they missed their lost flesh and blood, though I'm sure there was some sentimental biological tug, but because they were desperate to be rid of me. They expected me to break down, to finally show a sliver of emotion for once. What they didn't know was that I have been waiting for my early retirement, wrapped in human skin, to finally make her entrance. My name is Elise Vance. Or rather, I became Elise Vance when I was 7 years old. Before that, I was a CEO of a Fortune 500 conglomerate, in a world very much like this one, until a stroke at age 45 cut my reign short. I woke up in the body of a 7-year-old orphan who had just been adopted by the Vances to fill the void of their kidnapped infant. I didn't panic. I didn't cry. Instead, I assessed the assets. The Vances were old money, but they were idiots. Richard was a soft-hearted fool who invested in dream projects that bled capital. Cynthia was a socialite who thought budgets were suggestions, flaunting her lavish jewelry and attending parties daily. Their little fun was stomped beneath my heel the moment I arrived. By the time I was 10, I had taken control of the household finances. By 12, I was ghostwriting Richard's business emails. By age 15, I set both of their monthly allowances. By 22, I had staged a bloodless coup, relegated my parents to positions with comfy chairs and nothing else, and turned Vance Enterprises from a failing mid-tier company into a global titan. I saved them. I made them richer than God. And they hated me for it. Richard, reduced to a mere figurehead in his company, attempted several acts of subterfuge, all which were amateurish and easily crushed by me. When he got found attempting to bribe an intern for the 3rd time, even the board, partners who have worked with the Vances for decades, shut him down. Cynthia, on the other hand, acted out her rebellion in another way. After the 5th quote, arranged, end quote, fiancé was sent abroad in tears through mysterious means, I docked her allowance for 2 quarters. The 6th one's family went bankrupt through yet another set of mysterious circumstances, and I had Cynthia's allowance docked indefinitely. They hated the budgets. They hated the meticulous rules I set for their spending. They hated that their adopted daughter, a girl with no blood relation, looked at them with weary disappointment and treated them with the utter disdain of a tyrant, as if I was the tired parent. She'll be here this afternoon, Richard stammered. Elise, listen, we know this is awkward. It's not awkward, I said, finally setting the tablet down. I stood up, smoothing the skirt of my tailored charcoal suit. It is efficient. Efficient? Cynthia squeaked. I am tired, Richard. Cynthia. I looked at them, letting a rare, genuine smile touch my lips. It seemed to frighten them more than my scowl. I have spent 15 years cleaning up your messes. I have built this empire. I have secured the legacy. But I never wanted to be a babysitter. I walked to the window, looking out at the manicured grounds I had designed. The return of the true heiress is the perfect exit strategy, I continued. I will train her, I will mold her, and once she is capable of keeping you two from bankrupting yourselves within a week, I am retiring. I will buy an island, I will drink margaritas, and I will never look at a spreadsheet again. I turned back to them. Complex emotions swirled in their eyes. So, dry your eyes. Your liberation is here, and more importantly, so is mine. The car arrived at 4 p.m. sharp. I stood on the porch steps, flanked by the trembling parents. I had checked the file on the girl. Her name was Lillian. Growing up in the foster system, bounced around from home to home, tough, scrappy. Her record showed a history of truancy and fighting, but high test scores when she bothered to show up. Perfect. I needed a shark. I needed someone with grit who wouldn't cry when I explained how hostile takeovers work and acquisitions work. Someone who wouldn't bat an eye the moment a competitor shows a single scratch. The door of the black town car opened. Lillian stepped out. She was 21, a year younger than me. She wore combat boots, ripped jeans, and a leather jacket that had seen better decades. Her hair was dyed a defiant shade of violet at the tips, but it was her eyes that caught my attention. They were blue, like Richard's, but hard, cold, calculating. She looked at the mansion with a sneer. Then her eyes slid over her weeping mother, her stunned father, and landed on me. Her gaze sharpened. It was a glare of pure, unadulterated loathing. Excellent, I thought. She has flair. She sees me as the usurper. She wants to take what is hers. This will make the training process much faster. Lillian, Cynthia wailed, rushing forward to embrace her. Richard followed, blubbering something about my little girl. Lillian stood stiffly in their embrace, her arms at her sides. She didn't hug them back. She kept her eyes locked on me over Richard's shoulder. I checked my watch. Touching. Now that the reunion is achieved, we have work to do. Lillian pulled away from her parents, stepping forward. She stopped 2 feet from me. She was tall, almost my height. You're Elise, she said. Her voice was raspy, smoke and gravel. I am, I replied coolly. And you are late. The schedule I sent to the driver said 3:45. I don't follow schedules, she spat, and I don't like fake sisters playing princess in my house. Richard gasped, as if I was the one in combat boots. Lillian, please, Elise is the only reason you have a house to come back to. I cut in, my voice slicing through to the air. The pair of idiots immediately snapped their mouths shut. I held out a leather-bound folder. This is your itinerary for the next 6 months. You will wake up at 5 a.m. You will shadow me at the office. You will learn corporate law, advanced macroeconomics, and how to intimidate a board of directors effectively. If you survive, I hand over the keys to the kingdom, and I leave. Lillian looked at the folder, then at me. She snatched it from my hand. You think you can boss me around? She challenged, stepping into my personal space. You think, because you're the perfect daughter, you can control me like you control them? She gestured to our parents. I leaned in, matching her intensity, though I was overwhelming her. My coldness was unmatched in the boardrooms, and she could at least stand without sweating. Good. I don't want to control you, Lillian. I want to replace myself with you. Don't disappoint me. I turned on my heel and walked back into the house. Dinner is at 7. Do not be late. I dock allowance for tardiness. As I walked away, I felt a strange sense of satisfaction. She was feral. She was angry. She was going to be a magnificent Vance heiress once I broke her in. The first week was brutal, by design. I didn't coddle Lillian. I threw her into the deep end of Vance Enterprises. On day 1, I sat her in the corner of the boardroom during a 7-hour merger negotiation and forbade her to speak the whole time. On day 2, I buried her in 3 years of financial audits and told her to find the embezzler I had already identified. She glanced up at the stack of files that nearly hit the hanging lamp with a blank look. On day 3, I had her fire a department head who had been leaking secrets, though they had already been fabricated and patched by me 3 weeks ago. Then I berated her for 2 hours when she fumbled her words. I expected tantrums. I expected her to run crying to Richard and Cynthia. I expected her to quit. The parents certainly expected it. Every night at dinner, Richard would look at Lillian with pity. Is she working you too hard, sweetie? Cynthia asked on Thursday, eyeing the dark circles under Lillian's eyes. You know, you don't have to do this. We have plenty of money. You can just... I cut my steak with surgical precision right before she could finish her sentence. She cannot just be anything if she wants to lead. The world will eat her alive. I am merely tenderizing her so she becomes inedible. Lillian sat there, picking at her food. She was exhausted. Her violet-tipped hair was messy. But she didn't complain. She just stared at me. I'm fine, Lillian muttered. See, I said, dabbing my mouth with a napkin. She has stamina. Finish your vegetables, Lillian. You need the iron. The shift happened on Friday. We were in my office, the glass-walled fortress on the 50th floor overlooking the city. It was 9 p.m. The cleaning crew had already come and gone. I was working on the acquisition of a tech startup. Lillian was at a small desk I had installed for her, buried under a mountain of paperwork regarding logistics chains. I heard a heavy sigh. Done, she said. I didn't look up. Check it again. I checked it 3 times. Then check it a 4th. Incompetence lies in the assumption of perfection. There was silence. Then the sound of a chair scraping back. Footsteps approached my desk. I prepared myself for the explosion. This was the breaking point. This was where she would scream that I was a tyrant, that she was the real heiress, and that I should get out. Here, she said. I looked up. Lillian wasn't holding the report. She was holding a steaming mug of coffee. Not the breakroom sludge, but the specific pour-over blend I kept in my private reserve, brewed exactly how I liked it. Black, 2 drops of vanilla extract. Nothing more. No other sign of life or passion in there. I stared at the mug, then at her. Her expression was unreadable. What is this? I asked suspiciously. You've been rubbing your temples for the last hour, Lillian mumbled, looking away. And you skipped lunch because of that conference call. I blinked. Yes, I did. Drink it before it gets cold. She shoved the mug toward me. I took it cautiously. I took a sip. It was perfect. Why? I asked. Lillian shuffled her feet. The cold, defiant glare she'd worn all week was gone, replaced by something shy. 'Cause you're doing it all for me, she said quietly. I froze. Excuse me? I'm not stupid, Elise, she said, her voice gaining a bit of strength. I read the files. I saw the old news articles. Mum and Dad, they were drowning before you took over. You were 7 years old, fixing their mistakes. She looked at me, her blue eyes wide and suddenly very vulnerable. I came here ready to fight you, she confessed. I thought you were some stuck-up princess who stole my life. But all week, I've watched you. You don't enjoy this. You don't flaunt it. You just carry it. You carry the whole family on your back. I set the coffee down slowly. This was not part of the calculation. Lillian, I am doing this to ensure my own freedom. Once you're ready, I am leaving. No! The word exploded out of her. She slammed her hands on my desk, leaning over. You can't leave. That is the entire point of this arrangement, I said, baffled. But I can't do this without you. She looked frantic now. I don't want to be the CEO if it means you go away. You're amazing. You're like a machine, but a really cool, terrifying machine. I've never seen anyone shut down a room of old men like you did on Tuesday. It was majestic. I stared at her. Are you complimenting my intimidation tactics? I'm complimenting you. Lillian's face flushed pink. I never had a sister. I never had anyone to look up to. And now I come home and find out my sister is basically the empress of capitalism? Do you know how cool that is? She ran around the desk and, before I could react, threw her arms around me before I could even cringe at that title. I stiffened. Physical affection was not in the budget. Lillian, release me immediately. No, she muffled into my silk blouse. You're overworked. You need a hug, and you need a minion. I'll be your minion. You are the heiress, I stated, trying to pry her off. It was like trying to remove a limpet. You are to be the queen, not the minion. I'll be the queen's hand, she declared, looking up at me with shining eyes. I'll handle the grunt work. I'll fire the people you don't want to talk to. I'll fetch the coffee. Just teach me. But don't leave, please. I looked down at her. The hard, scrappy survivor from the foster system was looking at me with the adoration of a golden retriever puppy in combat boots and a camo jacket with metal studs on it. The idea of overhauling her wardrobe melted temporarily as I looked into her eyes. Something in my chest, a cold, calcified lump that had been there since my first life, cracked slightly. I hesitated. I cannot commit to staying indefinitely. My retirement plan involves a beach. We can buy the beach, Lillian beamed. We can move headquarters to the beach. Just don't leave me alone with Mum and Dad. Please. Have you seen them? Mum tried to buy a diamond the size of a tire yesterday. I sighed. I cancelled the transaction this morning, and you'll get used to them. So, see? I can't handle that alone. I'll kill them. I'll end up in prison. I looked at the coffee. I looked at the piles of work. I looked at the girl clinging to my waist. Fine, I muttered. We will renegotiate the timeline. Now let go. You are wrinkling my suit. Lillian grinned, a bright, dazzling thing that transformed her face. Yes, boss. I mean, yes, sister. The dynamic changed overnight. The parents were the first to notice. At breakfast on Saturday, Lillian didn't sit opposite me. She pulled her chair right next to mine. When Richard tried to ask for an advance on his allowance to invest in a revolutionary smart AI underwater appliance company, I opened my mouth to shut him down. That company claimed to be based overseas, but was established under a name in Delaware, and its owner was embroiled in multiple laundering investigations. But Lillian beat me to it. Are you insane? She snapped, buttering a croissant with aggressive force. No. Request denied. Richard gaped. But, Lillian, I thought you would understand. I understand that you're trying to waste Elise's hard-earned money, Lillian said, glaring at him. She worked until midnight fixing the Q3 projections. She doesn't need you buying electrocution hazards. She turned to me and placed a peeled hard-boiled egg on my plate. Eat, Elise. You need protein for brain function. Cynthia dropped her fork. Lillian, what are you doing? Taking care of the asset, Lillian said seriously. Elise is the family's most valuable resource. If she burns out, we all starve. Or worse, we have to live on merely 1 million a year. I hid a smirk behind my teacup. She has a point, Mother. The spoiled sister phase had begun, but it was not the kind of spoiled I had anticipated. Lillian became possessive. She became my shadow. She didn't want things. She wanted my attention. At the office, she was my bulldog. News ODF the true Vance heiress's arrival spread across the company like wildfire. But before compliance could loosen, she clamped down on them with methods similar to mine, only more blunt. If a manager tried to waste my time with trivialities, Lillian intercepted them. Does this require the CEO's direct approval? She would ask, crossing her arms. No? Then handle it yourself. She's busy conquering the Asian merger. But in private, she was insufferable in a different way. Elise, look at this dress. She barged into my office one afternoon holding up a tablet. It matches your eyes. I bought it for you. Wear it to the gala. I wear suits, Lillian. You wear armor? Wear the dress? I want to show you off. I am not a poodle. You're a very scary poodle. Please. I bought a matching one. We can coordinate. It'll terrify the board. The Vance sisters, a united front. I sighed. I was sighing a lot lately. But strangely, the headaches were fewer. Fine, but if it has sequins, I am firing you. No sequins, just pure intimidation silk. The crisis came 3 months later. It wasn't a business failure. It was a coup attempt. My parents, it seemed, had not enjoyed their sidelines, and they had misinterpreted Lillian's devotion to me as some sort of Stockholm syndrome. They reached out to my uncle Lucas, a man I had exiled from the company years ago for gross incompetence, and orchestrated a vote of no confidence. They called an emergency board meeting. I walked into the boardroom, Lillian a step behind me. The room was full. Richard and Cynthia sat at the far end, looking smug next to Uncle Lucas, a greasy man in an ill-fitting suit. Elise, Lucas smiled, showing yellow teeth. Good of you to join us, and the little lost lamb too. I sat down at the head of the table, fiddling with the expensive watch that Lost Lamb bought for me. Lillian stood to my right, her hands behind her back. She was vibrating with tension. Make it quick, Lucas, I said. I have a lunch reservation. You won't be needing it, Richard said, puffing out his chest. Elise, we appreciate what you've done, truly. But this family needs to be led by family. Blood family. We have the votes, Cynthia added, trying to sound authoritative. With Lucas's shares and ours and the board members, we've persuaded. We have 51%. We're removing you as CEO, effective immediately. Lillian will take over, with Lucas as her regent until she's ready. Silence descended on the room. I looked at the board members. Some looked away, ashamed. Others looked greedy, promised payouts by Lucas. I see, I said calmly. You think Lillian is going to go along with this? Of course she is, Lucas sneered. She's a Vance, a real Vance, not a stray we picked up. I felt the air temperature drop, but it wasn't coming from me. Lillian stepped forward. She placed her hands flat on the mahogany table. She leaned toward Lucas. A stray? She repeated softly. Now, Lillian, Richard said soothingly. Don't worry. Uncle Lucas will teach you everything. You won't have to listen to Elise's little rules anymore. You can have your own car, your own... Lillian started laughing. It was a dry, humourless sound. You idiots, she said. You absolute colossal idiots. Lillian, Cynthia faltered. Lillian straightened up, her eyes blazing. You think I want to replace her with him? She pointed at Lucas. I read the archives. You think no one would remember? Lucas bankrupted 3 subsidiaries in the 90s. He couldn't run a lemonade stand. Lillian, Lucas barked, show some respect. I show respect to competence, Lillian snarled. And there is only one competent person in this room. She reached into her blazer pocket and pulled out a thick stack of documents. She threw them onto the table. They slid across the polished surface, stopping after they bumped into Richard's gut. What is this? Richard asked. My shares, Lillian said. The ones you transferred to me upon my return. The 20% held in the family trust. Yes, so you vote with us. I transferred them, Lillian said, her voice ringing out clear and cold, this morning, to Elise. The room went dead silent. I looked up at Lillian. I hadn't known she was going to do that today. We had discussed it as a nuclear option, but she had executed it unilaterally. You what? Lucas choked. I gave them to Elise, Lillian said, crossing her arms and smiling a terrifying, predatory smile that looked exactly like mine. They haven't expected to have 2 Elises now. She now holds 35% personally. Combine that with her loyalist faction on the board. Do the math, uncle. She has 60%. The so-called loyalist faction, members I personally tamed a couple years through pressure and inescapable agreements, shifted in their seats nervously when I looked at them, but none of them disagreed. Some of them were even looking at the trio with a profound pity. You gave away your inheritance, Cynthia shrieked. To her? I didn't give it away, Lillian corrected. I invested it in the only person who knows what the hell she's doing. She turned to me, her expression softening instantly. Did I do good, big sis? I stood up slowly. I looked at my parents, who were pale as ghosts. I looked at Lucas, who was sweating profusely. Then I looked at Lillian. My retirement ticket, my student, my sister. You did adequate, I said. Lillian beamed. Security, I said, raising my voice slightly. The doors burst open. Escort Mr. Vance, Mrs. Vance, and Mr. Lucas out of the building. Revoke their passes, freeze their company cards, and I hear Germany is nice this time of year. They're getting old now. I believe a vacation to one of our properties there is in order. Elise, you can't, Richard cried as a guard grabbed his arm. We're your parents. I didn't say anything, just let out a hum of indifference, as if it wasn't my adopted parents getting whisked away. As they were dragged out, screaming and protesting, silence returned to the boardroom. The remaining directors looked terrified. I turned to Lillian. Sit down. She sat in the chair to my right. We have a meeting to finish, I told the room. Anyone else wish to resign? No. Good. 2 hours later, we were back in my office. That was awesome, Lillian said, kicking her boots up onto the coffee table. She was drinking a juice box she had found in the mini-fridge, ignoring my pained expression over the stains left on the expensive wood. Did you see Lucas's face? It was purple. I sat behind my desk, watching her. You took a significant risk, Lillian. If I decide to sell the company tomorrow and leave you with nothing, you have no legal recourse. You won't, she said confidently. Why are you so sure? I am a ruthless capitalist. Because you love me, she said, slurping the juice. I paused. I adjusted my glasses. I appreciate your utility. Nope, you love me. I saw you smiling when I made Lucas cry. It was a grimace of indigestion. Liar. Lillian hopped off the couch and trotted over to my desk. She leaned her elbows on the edge. So, about that retirement plan. Yes, I said, leaning back. It seems delayed. I cannot leave the company to you yet. You're too impulsive. Giving away your voting block was dramatic, but legally messy. I knew you'd handle the paperwork, she dismissed. But listen, I have a new proposal. Oh? Semi-retirement, she said. You stay as chairman. You handle the big, scary strategy stuff. I take CEO. I handle the day-to-day, the meetings, the parents. You take 3-day weekends every week, and we take vacations together. I looked at her. It wasn't the clean break I had wanted. It wasn't the solitude of a tropical island. It was messy. It involved human connection. It involved a loud, violet-haired girl who called me Big Sis and brought me coffee and fought my enemies with the ferocity of a rabid badger. It was acceptable. 4-day weekends, I countered. Lillian's eyes lit up. Deal. But you have to teach me how to do that eyebrow raise thing that makes grown men weep. It takes years of practice and existential ennui. I'm a fast learner. I picked up my pen, the expensive one I hadn't snapped. I signed the paperwork formalizing her new position as COO, the stepping stone to CEO. Get back to work, Lillian, I said, handing her the file. If you want to run this place, you have a lot of reading to do. On it, boss, she saluted, grabbed the file and headed for the door. Lillian, I called out just as she reached the handle. She turned back. Yeah? You did good. The smile she gave me was brighter than the stock market ticker on a record-breaking day. I know, she said. Love you too, Elise. She closed the door. I sat there for a moment in the silence of my office. I looked at the empty chair where she had sat. I looked at the city below, a city I had conquered alone. I picked up my coffee. It was still warm, just like I liked it. Brat, I whispered. But I was smiling, and for the first time in 2 lifetimes, I didn't feel like I was holding up the sky by myself.